I was lying in a hospital bed in my gown, hooked up to machines that beeped like a countdown to the rest of my life, and all I could think about was my daughter's face. Emma was 3 years old, 3. She didn't understand what open-heart surgery meant. She just knew that Mommy was going to be gone for a while, and someone needed to watch her. Someone needed to be there at bedtime. Someone needed to make sure she ate her chicken nuggets and didn't fall asleep on the couch watching cartoons. That someone was supposed to be my parents. But when I called them from the pre-op room, my mom's voice came through the phone like I'd just asked her to climb Mount Everest. There was this pause, this hollow pause that I'll never forget. And then she said, "Oh, honey, we can't. Your father has his golf tournament this weekend. We've had it planned for months." I'm 42 years old now, and I still remember that pause more clearly than I remember the surgery itself. Let me back up. Let me tell you about the before, because that's where this really starts. Not in the hospital, not in the panic, but in the ordinary, beautiful life I had built with my husband Michael and our daughter Emma. We lived in a 3-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows your business, whether you want them to or not. Our house was pale blue with white shutters, and Michael had spent the entire first summer after we bought it painting the deck. I remember watching him from the kitchen window, his shoulders already tanned, his focus absolute. That was Michael. He didn't do anything halfway. We'd been married for 5 years when everything started falling apart, though I didn't know it yet. On the surface, our life looked like something from a catalog. Michael worked in IT management for a logistics company. I was a marketing manager for a healthcare nonprofit. We made decent money, not rich, but comfortable. We had a mortgage we could manage, 2 cars that were paid off, and we were actually putting money into Emma's 529 college fund. We took 1 big vacation a year. We had friends over for barbecues on Saturday afternoons. My parents lived 20 minutes away, in the same town where I grew up. Mom, Karen, had been a teacher before she retired 5 years earlier. Dad, Bill, spent most of his time golfing, doing yard work, and complaining about his knees. They adored Emma. Or at least, I thought they did. I'd see my mom light up when Emma ran toward her, the kind of light that only comes from genuine joy. And Dad, who could be gruff, would spend hours building blanket forts with her or showing her his tomato garden out back. Michael's parents were different. His mom, Linda, lived in Florida and called every other Sunday, mostly to complain about the heat or ask if we'd heard from Michael's brother. His dad had passed away when Michael was in college, so when it came to childcare, to the everyday help that makes parenthood survivable, we relied on my parents. That was just how it was. I first felt the chest pain on a Tuesday in March, about 3 weeks before the surgery date. I was in a meeting at work, listening to our development director talk about Q2 metrics, and suddenly there was this tightness. Not crushing, not what I expected a heart attack to feel like based on every medical drama I'd ever seen. Just a weird pressure, like someone was standing on my ribs. I drove to urgent care after work, and they sent me straight to the ER. Turns out, I had a severe aortic valve defect, the kind that doesn't kill you immediately, but will eventually if you don't get it fixed. The cardiologist, Dr. Patel, showed me the scans. She pointed at my heart on the screen like it was a building with a crack in its foundation. "This valve isn't closing properly," she said. "Over time, blood backs up into your lungs. You're lucky we caught it. Another year, maybe 2, and you'd be in real trouble." I called Michael from the parking lot. I remember sitting in my car, the sun setting over the strip mall, and saying those words out loud for the first time. "I need heart surgery." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Okay, we'll figure it out." That was Michael, steady, capable, in control. The surgery was scheduled for early April. Dr. Patel explained the recovery, 6 weeks before I could lift anything heavier than Emma, 6 weeks before I could drive, 6 weeks of sitting in a recliner while my body healed from being cut open and put back together. "You'll need someone at home," Dr. Patel said during one of our pre-op appointments. "Someone to help with your daughter, cooking, all the daily tasks. Can your husband take time off work?" Michael looked at me. I looked at him. "I can take 3 weeks," he said. "After that, my company has a major project launching. They're already short-handed. I was going to tell you, babe, They've asked me to lead the implementation. It's a big deal for my career, but I'll figure something out." I felt something shift in my stomach, something separate from the valve defect, but I pushed it down. "It's fine," I said. "My parents can help after you go back. They're retired. They love Emma." So that was the plan. Michael would be home for 3 weeks. Then my parents would step in. Except now it was a week before the surgery, and my mom couldn't do it because of Dad's golf tournament. "It's at Pebble Beach," Mom said. Like that explained everything. Like Pebble Beach was more important than his daughter's open-heart surgery. "Your father's been looking forward to it. He's going with his college friends. It's their tradition." "Mom," I said, and I could hear the tremor in my own voice. "I'm having surgery. I'm going to be weak. I'm going to be in pain. I can't lift Emma. I can't drive. I need help." "I know, honey, I know. But your father—" "What about Dad?" I cut her off. "Can he skip one tournament?" There was another pause, a longer one. "You know how your father is," Mom said finally. "He's not going to change his plans. And honestly, Ashley, you're going to have Michael. You're going to have me for those first 3 weeks. Can't you just hire someone? A nanny or—" "I'm hiring a nanny to take care of my daughter while I recover from cardiac surgery?" My voice had gotten sharp. I didn't mean for it to, but there it was. "That's what you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you have a support system. Michael, me for 3 weeks, and then perhaps—" I hung up. I actually hung up on my mother a week before open-heart surgery. Michael found me in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" he asked. I told him about the golf tournament. I watched his face as I explained it, watched him process that my parents had chosen golf over their daughter's recovery. "Okay," he said after a moment. "Okay, so we figure it out differently." "How?" I said. "How do we figure this out?" He sat next to me and took my hand. His palm was warm, solid. "I'll take 6 weeks off," he said. "I'll push back with the company. I'll tell them I need 6 weeks. They'll understand." "They won't," I said. "You told me they're short-handed. You told me this project is huge for your career." "You're more important," Michael said. "You're always more important." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to hold on to that moment, Michael choosing me, choosing our family, without hesitation. But even then, even in that moment, something whispered in the back of my mind, something that sounded a lot like doubt. That was Tuesday evening. The surgery was scheduled for Friday morning. On Wednesday, Michael sat down with his laptop, and I heard him on a Zoom call with his boss, Derek. I could hear Derek's voice through the speaker, confused, then reluctant, then something that sounded like resignation. "Just get me through the first week," Derek said. "Get me the framework for the implementation, and then I'll figure out the rest." "I'll do it," Michael said. "I'll work nights if I have to, but I need to be home during the day." After the call, Michael looked exhausted. He came and sat next to me on the couch. "It's handled," he said, but I could see the cost of it written all over his face. And I hadn't even had the surgery yet. Part 2, the bottom and the turn. The surgery happened on a Friday morning in early April. I remember the anesthesiologist's face above me, asking me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before the world went black. When I woke up, there was pain. Not the kind you can describe to someone who hasn't felt it. It wasn't just my chest, it was everything. My lungs, my ribs, the incision that ran down the center of my body like a seam someone had ripped open. There was a tube in my throat that made it impossible to speak, and I remember thinking, in those first moments of consciousness, that maybe this was hell. Maybe I had died on the table, and this was what came next. Michael was there. He sat in a chair beside my hospital bed, his face gray with exhaustion, and he held my hand without speaking. I couldn't talk. I could barely breathe, but I could squeeze his fingers and he understood. I was alive. The first week was a blur of morphine and machines. The breathing tube came out on day 2, and the pain intensified, because now I could feel everything without the mercy of sedation. Nurses came in every few hours to check my vitals, to help me shuffle to the bathroom like an 80-year-old woman, to empty the drainage tubes attached to my body. Michael stayed. He slept in the hospital chair. He brought me ice chips. He didn't go to work. On day 5, Dr. Patel came in for rounds and told me I could go home the next day if everything stayed stable. "You're healing beautifully," she said, and I wanted to laugh because I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. That night, Michael held my hand again and said, "I need to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. Even through the pain, even through the fog of medication, I knew that tone. That was the tone of a man about to tell me something I didn't want to hear. "Derek called," Michael said. "The implementation is going worse than expected. They're losing timeline. He's asking if I can come in for at least a few hours a day next week, just to get the team back on track." I stared at him. I didn't say anything because I literally couldn't process the words. "I know," Michael said quickly. "I know this is bad timing. But Ashley, if I don't show up, they're going to bring in someone else to manage the project. That person is going to get the credit. That person is going to be in line for the promotion I've been working toward for 3 years." "Michael," I said, and my voice came out like a croak. "I just had my chest cut open." I know, and I hate this, but it's just a few hours. You'll be home. Your mom will be there during the day." Except my mom wouldn't be there during the day. My mom was supposed to come after Michael went back to work full-time, which was supposed to be after week 3. We were only at day 5. "My mom can't come yet," I said. "She's with Dad. They're in California." Michael's face changed. "What?" "The golf tournament," I said. "Pebble Beach. They left Wednesday." He stood up and walked to the window. I watched his shoulders tense. "When are they back?" he asked. "Sunday. 4 more days." "4 more days," he repeated, like he was testing the words to see if they made sense. I was discharged on Saturday morning. Michael drove me home, and every bump in the road sent lightning through my chest. I sat in the passenger seat of our Honda Odyssey, the mom car we'd bought 2 years ago, and tried not to cry because even crying hurt. The house looked the same, the pale blue colonial with the white shutters, the mailbox Michael had painted that first summer, the driveway where Emma's tricycle sat abandoned near the garage. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed, like I'd just been gone for an afternoon. Then, Emma came running out the door, and Michael had to catch her before she crashed into me. "Mommy!" she screamed. "Mommy's home!" I couldn't pick her up. I could barely hug her without gasping in pain. I sat down on the couch, carefully, so carefully, and let her climb into my lap while Michael hovered nearby, like he was waiting for me to shatter. "Does it hurt?" Emma asked, touching my chest where the bandage was visible through my shirt. "A little," I lied, "but I'm going to be okay. The doctors fixed my heart." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to playing with her dolls. That's when I realized I had no idea how Michael had managed for the past 5 days. The house was clean, but there were dishes in the sink. The laundry basket in the hallway was overflowing. Emma was wearing the same outfit she'd been wearing when I left for the hospital. I could tell because there was a stain on the front that hadn't been there before. "How are you doing?" I asked Michael quietly. "I'm fine," he said. "Don't worry about any of this. Just focus on healing." But he wasn't fine. I could see it in the way he moved, like he was running on fumes. I could hear it in his voice when he answered work emails on his phone, his tone shifting to something professional and strained the moment Derek's name appeared on the screen. Sunday arrived. My parents came home from California, and Mom called immediately. "We're back," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "How are you feeling, honey?" "I'm okay," I said. "Still in a lot of pain, but okay." "That's wonderful. Listen, your father wants to rest today. The flight was exhausting, but I can come over tomorrow morning if you need me." Tomorrow morning, as if I hadn't been home for less than 2 days, as if Michael wasn't already stretched to the breaking point. "Mom, I need you today," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. There was a pause. "Today?" she said. "Oh, honey, we just got home. The house is a mess. The refrigerator is empty. I need to do laundry and grocery shopping." I closed my eyes. I was sitting on my couch, unable to move without pain, with a 3-year-old who needed constant supervision, and my mother was telling me she needed to do laundry. "Mom," I said again, "I can't lift Emma. I can't cook. I can't drive. Michael has to go back to work tomorrow. I need help today." Another pause. I could hear my father in the background asking her something about the golf scores. "Can't Michael take one more day?" Mom asked. "He's already taken 5 days," I said. "He's supposed to be back in the office tomorrow morning." "Well," Mom said, "I suppose I can come for a few hours, but I'll need to leave by 4 to get home before dark." 4 o'clock. That gave me 6 hours. 6 hours of help, and then I was on my own again. She showed up at 10 in the morning on Monday, and the first thing she said when she walked through the door was, "Oh my goodness, this house is a disaster. Michael, how have you let it get like this?" Michael was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. He didn't turn around. "I've been a little busy," he said quietly. My mom set down her purse and immediately started picking up toys, opening windows, making little tisk sounds. She didn't sit with me. She didn't ask how I was feeling or if I needed anything. She just started organizing my life, which somehow made me feel worse, not better. At noon, she made lunch, a salad for herself and Emma, and a sandwich for me that I could barely eat because even swallowing hurt. Michael grabbed a protein bar and ate it standing up while he answered emails. "You should sit down," Mom said to him. "You look terrible." "I'm fine," Michael said. At 3:45, Mom announced she was leaving. She'd been there for less than 6 hours, and in that time she'd reorganized my kitchen cabinets, judged Michael's parenting, and made me feel like a burden instead of a patient recovering from major surgery. "I'll come back Wednesday," she said, kissing the top of my head like I was 5 years old. "Try to rest, honey. You need to focus on healing." After she left, I sat on the couch and cried. Not gentle tears, the kind that racked my body, that sent pain shooting through my incision, that made me gasp for air I couldn't quite catch. Michael came and sat next to me, and he cried too. "I can't do this," he said. "I can't be at work and here, and I can't." "I know," I whispered. "Your parents," he started, and then stopped himself. But I knew what he was thinking. "Your parents should be here. Your parents should be helping. Your parents should have skipped the goddamn golf tournament." The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Michael went back to work full-time. He'd wake up at 5:30, shower, get dressed in his IT uniform of khakis and a polo shirt, and leave by 6:30. I'd listen to his car pull out of the driveway, and then it would be just me and Emma. My mom came by twice a week, always in the afternoon, always for exactly 2 hours. She'd clean something, make a comment about how Michael should be doing more, and leave. My mother-in-law, Linda, called from Florida once to ask how I was doing, and when I told her I was struggling, she said, "Oh, that's so difficult for you," in a tone that made it clear she didn't actually care. Michael's brother didn't call at all. I couldn't pick Emma up. I couldn't bathe her alone because I couldn't kneel down or lift her out of the tub. I couldn't cook dinner because standing for more than 5 minutes made me dizzy, and my incision throbbed. I'd sit on the kitchen floor while Emma played with pots and pans, and I'd supervise like that was parenting. One day, about 2 weeks after the surgery, Emma asked me why I was sad. "I'm not sad," I lied. "You cry a lot," she said. She was 4 years old, and she could see through me completely. That night, after she was asleep, I sat in the dark living room and thought about my parents. I thought about the golf tournament. I thought about my father, probably laughing with his college friends at Pebble Beach while his daughter was recovering from open-heart surgery. I thought about my mother, coming for 2 hours a week like she was doing me some massive favor. And I thought about Michael, who had put his career on hold, who was working nights after coming home from a full day at the office, who was sleeping on the couch because he didn't want to accidentally hurt me in bed. Something shifted in me that night. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but clarity. I pulled out my phone and texted my mother. "I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over tomorrow?" She responded within seconds. "Of course, honey. Everything okay?" "No," I typed back. "Everything is not okay." But I didn't send it. Instead, I sent, "Everything's fine, just need to talk." The next day, Mom arrived at her usual time. She was carrying flowers, some kind of apology gesture maybe, or just her default when she didn't know what else to do. She set them on the kitchen counter and turned to me with a smile. "So what did you want to talk about?" she asked. I took a breath. My incision ached. My heart, the newly repaired one, pounded in my chest. "I want you to understand something," I said. "I almost died. The doctors told me that if we'd waited another year or two, my heart would have failed. I would have left Emma without a mother. And when I was about to go into surgery, the thing I was most afraid of wasn't the surgery itself. It was that you weren't going to be here for her." My mom's face changed. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "You chose a golf tournament," I said. "You and Dad both chose a golf tournament over your daughter's recovery, and I need you to know that I will never forget that. I will never forget that pause on the phone when you told me you couldn't help. I will never forget asking you for help and having you come for 2 hours because you had laundry to do." "Ashley," my mom said, and her voice was shaking. "I didn't realize—" "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't realize. You didn't think about what I needed. You thought about what you wanted." She sat down on the kitchen stool, and I watched her face crumple. Part of me wanted to take it back, to apologize, to make her feel better. That was my default, taking care of my parents' feelings, smoothing things over, being the good daughter. But I was done. "I'm going to need help for the next month," I said. "Real help, not 2-hour visits. I need someone here during the day while Michael is at work. If you can't do that, I'll hire someone. But I need you to understand that your choice this week, to prioritize golf over me, that's something I'm not going to forget." My mom cried. She apologized. She said she hadn't realized how serious it was, that she thought Michael would be there, that she didn't understand what recovery from cardiac surgery actually meant. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she was genuinely ignorant. But ignorance wasn't an excuse. Ignorance was a choice to not pay attention. "I'll be here," she said finally. "Every day, starting tomorrow. I'll be here." She was. But by then, something had already broken between us, something that wouldn't fully heal for years. What I didn't know was that the real reckoning was still coming, that my parents' abandonment was just the first crack in the foundation, that Michael's sacrifice, his choice to put me first, came with a cost I wouldn't understand until much later. That the person I was before the surgery, the woman who trusted her family, who believed that love was enough, who thought her marriage was solid, was gone. And the person I was becoming? She was going to burn a lot of bridges before she figured out who she really was. The next 3 years were a careful dance of distance and politeness. My parents came to Emma's birthday parties. We had Thanksgiving dinner at their house. We sent Christmas cards. On the surface, everything looked normal, but underneath, there was a coldness that never quite thawed. I'd call my mom once a week out of obligation, and our conversations were the kind that happened between people who didn't quite trust each other anymore. Michael and I never really talked about what happened during my recovery. We just moved forward, the way people do when something breaks and you're not sure how to fix it. He threw himself into work, and I threw myself into being the perfect patient, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, anything to make sure I never had to ask for help again. But the real reckoning didn't come until Emma was in 2nd grade. It was a Thursday evening in November, and I was picking Emma up from school. She had a folder of artwork to show me, and she was chattering about something her friend Sophie had said at recess. Normal stuff. The kind of everyday moment that makes you feel like everything is actually fine, that maybe the damage from the surgery and the abandonment and the strain on my marriage was finally healing. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. "Is this Ashley Murphy?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I said. "Who is this?" "This is Detective Raymond Walsh with the Columbus Police Department. I'm calling about an incident involving your father, William Henderson. Do you have a moment to talk?" The world tilted. Emma was still talking about Sophie, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "What kind of incident?" I managed. "Your father was arrested this afternoon for fraud," Detective Walsh said. His voice was calm, clinical. "He's been running a Ponzi scheme out of his golf club for the past 8 years. We've identified approximately 75 victims. The total amount stolen is around $4 million. I pulled over. I was still in the school parking lot, and I just sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel while Emma kept chattering and the detective kept talking about federal charges and asset seizure and the fact that my father had been using aliases to hide money in offshore accounts. "My father," I said slowly, "golfs." "Yes, ma'am. That's where he recruited most of his victims. He'd build relationships over rounds of golf, then pitch what he called an exclusive investment opportunity for retired professionals. He'd show them falsified statements, fake returns. They'd invest. He'd take the money and use it to pay off earlier investors while keeping the rest for himself." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Emma had finally noticed something was wrong. "Mommy, why are you sad?" she asked from the back seat. "Can I ask you something?" I said to the detective, my voice shaking. "Did my mother know about this?" There was a pause. "We're still investigating your mother's involvement," Detective Walsh said carefully. "But based on the financial records, it appears she knew about at least some of the scheme. We found emails between them discussing account transfers and investor complaints. She may have been actively involved in the accounting side of things." My mother, who had complained about laundry while I was recovering from cardiac surgery, who had given me 2 hours of help per week, who had made me feel like a burden for asking for basic assistance. My mother had been busy with something else entirely. She'd been helping my father steal $4 million from people who trusted him. I drove home in a state of shock. Michael was already there. He'd left work early because I'd texted him something vague about needing to talk. When he saw my face, he knew it was bad. I told him about my father's arrest, about the Ponzi scheme, about my mother's possible involvement. "Jesus Christ," Michael said, sitting down hard on the couch. Your parents did this." "My father did this," I said. "My mother—" "Your mother helped," Michael finished, "which makes it worse, because she had the chance to stop it. She had the chance to do the right thing." He was right, and that's what made it unbearable. The news broke the next day. Local retiree arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The local news station sent a reporter to our house. I had to tell Emma to stay inside while I stood in our driveway and explain to a camera that I had no comment, that I was as shocked as everyone else, that this had nothing to do with me. But it had everything to do with me, because for 3 years I had been angry at my parents for choosing golf over my recovery, and it turned out that my father had never been choosing golf at all. Golf had been the cover. Golf had been the mechanism. Golf had been the reason he couldn't come help me, not because he was selfish, but because he was a thief. My mother called me that evening. Her voice was small and scared. "Ashley," she said, "I know you probably don't want to talk to me right now, but I need you to know." "You stole from people," I said. I wasn't angry. I was past anger. I was somewhere else entirely, in a place where I couldn't quite feel anything. "You helped my father steal from 75 people, while your daughter was recovering from cardiac surgery, while she was asking you for help. You were helping him cover up his crimes." "I didn't know," my mother started. "Stop," I said. "Don't insult me with lies. The detective said there were emails. You knew. You knew, and you didn't care because you were too busy counting money." "Ashley, please. Your father, he told me. He said it was legal, that it was all legitimate. I just handled the books. I didn't understand what was actually happening." "You understood enough," I said. "You understood enough to help. You understood enough to not tell me what was going on. You understood enough to come to my house for 2 hours a week while my husband was falling apart trying to take care of me, and the whole time you were sitting on this secret." She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I don't care," I said, and I meant it. "I don't care that you're sorry. I don't care what you did or didn't know. What I care about is that I asked you for help when I was vulnerable and scared, and you chose your husband's schemes over your daughter's health. That's what I'm going to remember. Not the golf tournament, not the 2 hours a week, but the fact that you had a choice, and you chose wrong." I hung up. I didn't call her back. I didn't respond to the voicemails or the letters or the cards that came in the mail. My mother had been arrested 2 weeks after my father, charged as an accessory to fraud, and she spent 18 months in federal prison. My father got 5 years, and I got something that I hadn't expected: clarity. Because in the aftermath of their arrest, when the details started coming out, I realized something. I had been so focused on my parents' betrayal during my recovery that I had completely missed their betrayal before that. They hadn't skipped my surgery to go to a golf tournament out of selfishness or negligence. They had skipped it because they were running a massive fraud scheme, and they couldn't risk the disruption. They had made a choice, a conscious, deliberate choice, to prioritize their crimes over their daughter's life. And somehow, knowing that made it worse. Not better, but worse. Because it meant that the pain I had felt wasn't even an afterthought. It was collateral damage in their greed. Michael and I went to therapy. We had to talk about what had happened during my recovery, and we had to talk about the fact that his sacrifice, the 6 weeks he'd taken off work, the nights he'd worked until 3 in the morning, the way he'd put his career on hold, had been based on a lie. My parents weren't irresponsible. They were criminals. And that reframing, somehow, made his sacrifice even more meaningful to me. He had done all of that without knowing the full truth, just because I needed him. It took a long time to rebuild my marriage after that. We had both been traumatized by my surgery and its aftermath, and we had both dealt with it in ways that pulled us apart instead of together. But slowly, we started talking about things we'd never addressed. Michael told me that he'd resented my parents for years, not for skipping the surgery, but for making him feel like the failure when he couldn't do everything alone. I told him that I had resented him for having to work nights, for not being able to save me from my own family's betrayal. We forgave each other, and in forgiving each other, we started to heal. As for my parents, I sent them a letter while my mother was in prison. I didn't visit. I didn't attend any hearings. I just wrote a letter explaining what their actions had cost me, not in dollars, but in trust, in safety, in the ability to believe that the people who raised me would show up for me when it mattered. I told them that I was moving forward with my life and that they were not going to be part of it. I told them that Emma had a grandmother and grandfather, but those people had made a choice to be someone else instead. I never heard from them again. My father's released from prison next year. My mother got out after 18 months and moved to Arizona. She tried to contact me once, but I blocked her number. Emma asks about them sometimes, and I tell her the truth, that some people make choices that break the bonds of family, and that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to let them go. Michael and I are still together. We've built something stronger than what existed before the surgery, something that was tested and came out the other side intact. We talk about the hard things now. We don't take each other for granted, and most importantly, we know that when the really bad stuff happens, we have each other. That's not a small thing. That's everything. The last time I saw my mother was in a grocery store parking lot, about 6 months after she got out of prison. She was getting out of a car, and I was getting into mine. Our eyes met across the asphalt. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, broken. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just got in my car and drove away, and I never looked back.